Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Mirko. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here, and I'm looking forward for today's episodes. Um, First and foremost, if you're new, very grateful for you being here, and if you're new, welcome. This is a podcast where we talk to many coffee professionals unknown, and we just have a ball, listen to people's stories, allow them to share them, and learn a thing or two. And the goal is to always add value. If you enjoy this, just feel free to take a screenshot and reshare this onto your stories. I will be interviewing Michael Phillips, and I'll send him an invite right away, just in case. So yeah, if you don't know much about the guests, well, stick around because he got an incredible story. And speaking of him, here he is. I'm very honored to be able to chat.
Hello, hello.
Good evening, and thank you so much for being here. Absolute pleasure, and super good to meet you, man.
Great to meet you too, Mirko.
Uh, um, yeah, what a treat. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm over here in Los Angeles, and it's been a little smoky in the West Coast lately. So, but we're at least on the southern part of the state doing a little bit better. So that's not too bad. But outside of that, I'm blessed. Things are really good right now. Safe, sound, plenty of good coffee to drink. So hard to complain.
We're in good company with that, luckily, and super good to hear. And especially, I'm assuming we skipped that, but with COVID and the whole pandemic, everything going well within your family.
Yeah.
Super good to hear.
How are you doing today, Mirko?
Good, good. I'm really well. Just been super busy working on different projects. So you know how it is. Just your head
Yeah.
is sort of in a zillion places, but it's been good. Now I'm in the zone, talking to you, and yeah, super glad to get to know more and to share your story with people. And yeah, this is good.
Awesome.
Um, Speaking of which, usually we get the ball rolling by just asking, how did you start your journey?
Um, it's a little bit later in life probably than a lot of people now. I I used coffee medicinally throughout my teenage years a little bit, but I only really started to become interested in the specialty side of things when I got into college. And there was a single origin focused coffee. Like I went to school in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which for those that don't know, it's like rural, very, very isolated kind of country. Um, and I went there oddly enough for a film program because this is way back in the day. They were one of the first colleges in the state that I lived in that really embraced digital filmmaking. Um, so I ended up going there to focus on that, and there wasn't a lot going on in this town, but luckily for me, this guy Theo McCracken, he uh, he moved up there. Just he had been in the coffee industry elsewhere and wanted to just open up a small shop and do his thing, and like this guy was a classic painting of a crotchety old roaster. He would sit in the back of the shop and smoke cigarettes and drink whiskey while he's roasting all these coffees. And he didn't give a damn what anybody else thought. But this is back in 2002, and in the middle of nowhere, and this guy is roasting top shelf single origin coffees. He's brewing proper sized espresso drinks like 6 ounce caps and macchiatos and brewing every cup to order by hand. 2002, middle of nowhere. The guy was a savant ahead of his time. So he got me interested. He's the first person where I was like, holy, this is something different. This is not the coffee I'm used to. And that just planted the seed. And I continued on in my film career, thinking that that was what I wanted to do, all the while, like, kind of go into this place like Coffee University every chance I get. He would teach me about different origins and how to do a pour over. And ultimately, I moved away from that college town to Minneapolis to work in a film studio. And I couldn't stand the work. I didn't even own a TV. And here I am, like, struggling to get jobs to, like, stand next to the camera operator with pieces of tape on me. Like, it was the film industry is brutal. And every time I'd be coming home from these shoots, I realized I wasn't reading about the next film project. I was on coffee blogs. Back then that was Coffeed, and it was just a whole bunch of home coffee nerds, like, trying to figure out their game. And eventually I was like, screw this. I sold all of my film equipment and I used it to buy a home roaster and a small espresso machine and a Mazzer Mini. And I was like, I'm going to figure out how to do this. So I just did that for a while, and I tried to get a job in Minneapolis, but no one on earth would hire me. It was like coffee shops back then were mismatched furniture and like cute chicks with tattoos and piercings, and that, I was like some late 20s white dude being like, oh yeah, but how often do you clean your grinder? And they're like, we don't want you here. So after about a year of trying to do that and like working on stuff on my own at home and ordering coffee from Sweet Maria's and all that, I was dating a woman at the time who lived back in the college town that I was at. She was actually the one that got me to go to that first coffee shop. But she was flying back from the East Coast through Chicago, and she's like, you got to meet me in Chicago and pick me up, because there's this thing, it's a coffee competition happening. Yeah, I think you're gonna love it. So I drove from Minneapolis to Chicago for the 2005 barista competition that they hosted. And it was my first time getting to go to a real specialty coffee shop, and everything just blew my mind. I was like, this is what I want to do. So I got back and I was just checking the job boards online. Within a week, I saw an opening on the production floor and called them up. They're like, you can make it here in a month, the job's yours. So I sold everything I owned, packed up my little Honda Civic, drove to Chicago, and like it was all like a fairy tale, because I don't know if you guys know who Jeff Watts is, and if you don't, shame on you. The man's a legend. But I ended up sleeping on his couch the first night I moved there. Like, the production guy was like, yeah, you moved down here, take a little while, find a spot. We got a couch you can crash on, and it was Jeff Watts' couch. So it was a pretty epic start, and that got me in at Intelligentsia, and the rest is what it is.
It's super interesting, and thank you for sharing that. I just it's just, for me, I always say I love coffee, but I love people more, and I think people and their stories is just what I'm passionate about. If I wish I was academic enough to go and study, because I love to study people. I don't know, it sounds a bit creepy probably, but it's just like that light bulb aha moment. It's so interesting to me in the sense of that I always bang on about the fact that it's difficult for many people who feel that they're stuck, or they feel the path has been drawn by their parents, the society, culture. And I'm not pointing fingers because there's not right or wrong, but I think it's essential more than ever to recognize that we've been speaking about the wrong currency for so long, which is the dollar currency, which I get it. Look, we all have expenses, but
Yeah.
For you, it's like, yeah, how difficult was for you to drop the film industry, because I'm assuming that you had someone or something behind the reason why you got in there in the first place to go and say, well, I'm gonna clean grinders and pull
I
shots.
mean, I don't know. I definitely understand the idea of like talking about what's important in life and focusing on that. But yeah, I was a mess up. You know, in high school, like I thought I wanted to go into architecture and I didn't know what to do. Me deciding to go into film was not something my parents were thrilled about. You know, they're like, "Oh yeah, you want to get an arts degree? That's great." Uh, but you know, they loved me. They supported me to let me take out all the loans to pull it off. But yeah, like bouncing from film to coffee was, you know, it was like going from zero to zero. I wasn't making, I had a steadier income when I was in film, but you know, I hated the work. So giving all that up to go, and actually I started in production before I even got to clean grinders. Um, Cleaning grinders was a step up. Uh, so it wasn't a huge leap, and I think that's why the coffee industry is hard. You know, it's not built for sustainable, easy entry. You know, if I were starting out again at this point in life, you know, I'm 41 now, so it would have been a lot more challenging to live in an apartment with three other roommates and like be scraping for rent. And but back then, like that's what it was. You know, there wasn't a ton of money being splashed around, and it's still not necessarily that much better for people just getting in. Um, so it's hard, but I think by virtue of the fact that I wasn't coming from uh, something with a golden parachute, it made it a lot easier to just say, all right, I'm going to do this.
Which makes total sense, and I think that I often we often forget in Melbourne or Sydney that we are super lucky and privileged because baristas here, you know, can
Oh
make a
yeah,
living. You know,
you
it's
guys
like
are the dream. Oh man, I've been over there. I talked to some people. We're like, you get what? How much paid vacation? What?
so it's you know we're in a super privileged position, and I think that even here we need to recognize and admit the fact that at the end of the day, coffee, no matter where you are, whether you're in the States or Germany or Australia, um, ultimately you got to start from the bottom. And not because it's a cliche way to say, but if you don't know how to wash dishes and how to well clean the grinder to your side of the story, well, you're not gonna be able to become that junior head barista that you want to become or start even thinking about competing. Like that in that 15 minutes of barista comp ain't just all about making coffee. It's stages, presentation, is the wording, but also, like I said again, the part of washing and tidying and cleaning. So just for the bless you, just for the kids at the back. So that's was sort of your entry ticket for the coffee world, and then obviously, I know you said the rest of history, but I think it's worth to mention that you got a few, you know, good awards under your belt, and you know, obviously you started competing at some stage.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was the entry into it, but the coffee career from that point was definitely its own roller coaster. You know, back in 2006, if you were reading about coffee online, there was Intelligentsia, Stumptown, Counterculture, and those were kind of the big three. Like all of your other folks, like even back then, Blue Bottle was like one, two cafes. Ritual wasn't even on the map yet. Like all these things were just in their infancy. So getting to get a foot in the door there, you know, Doug Zell is a very competitive CEO, and he invested in people that wanted to really push hard. So it was a really fortuitous moment to get a chance to be in that environment, because the people that had come before, like a lot of people won't remember these names, but Matt Riddle, Ollie Matusak, Amber Sather, like these folks were doing coffee competitions from the get-go and just stomping on things, right? Like every year they're in the top six. So coming in and having those folks as coaches, and then just the opportunity to have a, you know, a machine and a lab and the the wherewithal for them to let me use that for my own free time was pretty great. But yeah, I originally wanted to be a coffee roaster, which is why I went the production route. And after a year or two of that, I realized how much I would suck at being a coffee roaster. It's just a very different world. You know, you have to be willing to stand in front of that machine for hours and hours and hours, and that's the only one you talk to. Um, Once I started getting into competitions, though, I realized like, oh man, I did it initially just to learn more about how to make coffee, but then I was like, this is what I love. You know, working with coffee is what I love. Meeting people, talking to people, the service industry. So immediately switched gears there, got into a cafe, just bottom rung, worked my way up to trainer, and then kept going in the competition circuit. And after I won the US the first time, then I stepped into running the training department. After the second time, just kept building out that program, and that's when I won the world competition in London, 2010. And that just opened up so many doors in terms of travel and exposure to what coffee is like on a global scale, how it varies from culture to culture. And it was tricky because I loved the people I work with. I loved the company. Intelligentsia was amazing, but it was getting to it's funny to say this now with where I'm at Blue Bottle, but it was feeling too big. You know, we had just opened our third cafe out in California, and we had 3 in Chicago, and it was just a lot to manage and so many different things to do, and like there's only so much that I could actually influence, control on. That me and 2 other folks, Tyler Wells, Chris Owens, decided we want to take a step back. We want to do something smaller, something simpler, and we broke off and started Handsome Coffee in downtown LA, which was all those things. It was smaller, it was simpler, it was ours. We could break any rule we wanted, make up a few more, and that was its own magical point in time where I got exposed to the hardships of partnership and entrepreneurship, and what it's like to work with investors, and a whole bunch of really wonderful and ugly things came out of it. Until ultimately we found a company that wanted to purchase Handsome to merge with, and that was Blue Bottle. And I joined them, this was back 2014. I joined Blue Bottle when they were at 12 cafes between San Francisco and New York. Now we're at like 86 cafes between San Francisco, New York, Boston, DC, Los Angeles, Tokyo, Kyoto, Seoul, and Hong Kong. And it's been an amazing ride because a lot of my work was focused around changing the way they make coffee, revamping the standards, scaling the training, and then building the teams for all of those different locations. So it's been a whirlwind.
And well, honestly, it's super amazing to hear this story, and you touched on a good 5 topics that really stood out. Sorry, one, I think the importance, and I'm touching all of them, and then we unpack them. But investing in people, that's a huge one. I think that never more than now, it's just the case of doing so, and I think that we've forgotten about that. There's too much rumor. The magic dust and the sugar coating of entrepreneurship and investors, and the romanticized side of things of that, because I think often it's romanticized, the idea of, like you said, the partnerships and everything, but it comes at a cost. The love for people and the fact that it's important to find your place in coffee, not just find yourself in coffee, because I myself found the same. I was doing induction at Tommy's Estate, and it was my second year there, and I was doing like a little small crash course on roasting, and I remember sitting with Josh in front of this filter. We're roasting some filter, and he's explaining it, and then I was like, what we do now? I was like, yeah, we wait. And I was like, geez, all right, 10 hours a day of this, no way. I need, for me, but there's nothing wrong. There's some people who love that. So I think that's, and then obviously, interesting to hear, obviously, your perspective around the coffee globe and the different cultures and travels. And, I would actually love to hear more about what you would like to bring from Japan to the USA and back, because I think every country has something good
Yeah.
to share with someone else. And well, maybe we can start with that, because that was, obviously you got a chance to go there and to meet and explore, learn.
Yeah, it's been, I mean, working for Blue Bottle has been amazing. They treat me better, pay me better than I ever paid myself, treated myself. Um, got me so many new experiences. And out of all of it, I think the opportunity to do the work that I've gotten to do in Asia is top of the list. Opening our first cafe over there was no experience like it. Because we had no idea what we were getting into. We were going to open our first shop, roastery, in this part of Tokyo called Kiyosumi. And it's kind of a more quiet residential neighborhood. And then we're going to open our second location a month or two after that in a more business district. And we're like, all right, that'll be big. So we're prepping for this first one, have no idea what we're getting ready for. And, when opening day comes, there was a 3-hour long line outside. And that line didn't go away for the entire first 2 weeks. And this is with 20 baristas on the floor. We had 4 different points of sale going, and then like just armies of people on the brew bar and the espresso machine, every cup brewed to order. So like, the reception over there was amazing. But it's also like every other part of that experience has been incredible. Our ability, you can do nicer things for less money in Japan. Just the design and the build opportunities are so much more affordable and realistic, and the aesthetic and people's patience for a slower design or an out of the way location is enormous. In the US, it's convenience, efficiency, expense, like everything like weighs down on that part, where in the cafes we've built over there, we've been able to take a lot more luxury with what we're doing in that. So the design build has been great, and we have, excuse me, we have imported some of those design aesthetics that we've been able to develop with our teams over there into some of the US cafes. But in terms of baristas, it's so different. There's an expression that goes something like, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. It describes what seems to be a pretty prominent theme in work ethic over there, in that, in the US, we specialize in rock stars, like people that are like, give me attention, I want a spotlight, I'm great, look at my latte art, I want to be on milk, and it's not bad. I'm guilty of it. I mean, you don't get into competition without having some desire for that. But when you work in the teams over there, everybody's just so, they have each other's back so hard. Like nobody's like trying to steal the spotlight. It's just such a flawless integration. Like some of the first latte art competitions. So I would host some of those over there as team building stuff, and people would apologize after they won. They'd be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." It's like, no, okay, yeah, okay, good sport, but come on, like. But it's the work ethic. The teamwork is incredible, and no one hesitates to do any of the jobs. You never have a hard time getting someone to hop on the register. So like that relentless precision and desire to do what needs to be done, I would take anywhere else. It is a little bit like, sometimes it's hard to get like big voices and what they refer to as California hospitality over there as we're working with them, because it's so polite, it's very deferential to the customers. Whereas when we would have US baristas come over, like, even if they only know 2 or 3 words of Japanese, they'd be like, "Arigato gozaimasu!" They're talking to people and they're engaging in a way that's not as common in the hospitality sector over there. Um, so I think, that's where we've seen some transfer in good ways. Um, and technically speaking, I think both of our markets are really doing a great job. I think the Japanese and Korean markets, they're really good at following the rules, um, but almost to a fault sometimes. You know, like uh, when I had first gone over there to set up the brew bar system and grinding and dosing, um, we set them up with grind by weight baratzas. They had like a bank of 6 of them, right? And they're like, in general, we would find that the accuracy tolerance inside of those to be about half a gram, and if it drifted, we could calibrate it back. Um, but by the time that I had come back, they were not using the grind by weight function anymore because it wasn't accurate enough. They were taking it every dose and like getting it down to a tenth of a gram for brewed cups of coffee. We push for a tenth of a gram in espresso dose, um, but for a brewed cup, I would challenge any taster to like tell the difference between 22.1 and 22.3. Um, but because that was the rule, like our target was this number, like they like keep dialing back into that number. Um, so it cuts both ways.
It's super interesting. And when you talked about the hospitality side of things, I had the luck of interviewing Hide and Sheen just maybe a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about obviously, the Japanese hospitality and how it's more, like you say, a little bit more quiet and more polite, and there's nothing wrong with the California hospitality or the Melbourne or it's just different, which is beautiful. When it comes to what you were talking about, the ethics, obviously every country has, flaws and, things that could be done better. But I just always remember watching this YouTube video about, how kids obviously I might be wrong, but kids from a super young age in Japan at school, at the end of school, they have tasks in terms of cleaning the classroom and, where is the corridors or who's on the whiteboard. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's very interesting because I wonder how much of that has, them going back to the rules, a tenth of a gram for the brew bar, how much of that is actually an influence on it, which is super interesting. And look, I think that you're the type of person with so many stories that I love to just, literally sit down at a whiskey bar or a coffee shop or a restaurant. Just, I think that you've seen a lot, and but it's to your merits. I think that we forgot the word merit in terms of I think merit is super important, and it's incredible, your career and what you've been, pulling off. So yeah, props to you for sure, man.
Thank you.
No, legit. We reached the halfway mark, and before we dive deeper into the other questions, we have a ritual question. So it's the out of the box question we ask everybody halfway through the episodes. Michael, if you could, who would you like to have dinner with? And it can be anybody. It doesn't have to be coffee. Alive, not alive. It's your guest.
Oh man, alive, not alive. Um, I mean, it's tough. If it's anybody alive or not alive, I would probably want to have like an engaging meal with Einstein. Yeah, because like it's he's a person of obvious great intellect. He like getting to run things by him, be like, yeah, this crazy shit's happening now. He'd be like, what? Like his perspective would be fantastic, but he's also from everything that I've read, he's an engaging person. This world values productivity and intellect and talent, right? We put high markers on those, but a lot of that can be lost or wasted if you can't communicate with people. Um, and I feel like he would be a good combination of those things, and just to get a perspective of, that towering intellect, but also that level of uh, engaging and talented conversation would be great.
Yeah, you're the first one out of 85 to say Einstein, so there you go. It's
Hey,
super good to hear different answers.
everyone
Yeah.
said James Hoffman, didn't they? God, he's not that entertaining in person, I tell
Do you know
you.
what? Actually, the only one person who said James Hoffman was he did. Just because it's like, it's been a while, and that was the first person who said James Hoffman. We had a lot. Yeah, we had a few actually interesting names popping up, but yeah, it's always a bit of a fun question. And to sort of like move back to a point that you made about you facing the roaster, and I'm sure you were still pretty decent roaster, but I'll take your word. But and now obviously you're the director of training, so people are like your center focus, because training, there's no better word than explain that the fact that you're training people to make coffee. So it's like the best of the two worlds for you, I'm assuming. How is your approach, and what do you think is the best thing to go about people and coffee when it comes to training, as well as just in general when it comes to being in a coffee shop? Because like you said, we focus so much on the rules and the recipes, but we still need to be engaging, like Einstein would be, when it comes to serve, because we are in the service hospitality industry after all.
Yeah, I mean that's oh God, it's such a can of worms, because every company has different needs, right? When I had my own coffee company, I knew and worked bar shifts with every single person there. Training in that environment looks very different than a company with 86 stores, where we're still trying to maintain that level of quality, but how do you systematize training on a massive scale? This is where you see all of these really amazing small shops where it's owner operated coffee shop. Maybe they're roasting their own coffee, maybe they're multi roast or whatever, but there's a person inside of that building who has enough crazy commitment and passion that they're willing to put it all on the line, their savings, their entire lifestyle, um, just to make this happen. Once they get to the point where they've got 3 to 5 cafes, and they're not in every one of those buildings unless they built up people like them, it starts to get challenging. That's why I think it's so hard for small companies to break that threshold of 3 to 5 cafes, because training and keeping that proximity and connection to that original idea and vision um, just gets really difficult at that point. Um, but it's, when I was at Intelligentsia, we had this super militaristic, like, all right, here's the program. It's going to be 6 months before you touch the espresso machine, and it's going to be this long before you're allowed to work it alone. And it's going to be, and it's like almost like training as punishment. Like you have to pay your dues, and that method can work. But it's super ego driven, and it's also super unnecessary. The way people learn most effectively is on the job, right? There's a learning theory that states it's the 10-20-70 rule. I don't know if you've heard of it or not, but the concept is 10% of your learning happens from basically classroom and description, like this is this, this is this. 20% happens with active coaching, with someone watching you and working uh, side by side with you and correcting in a safe environment. 70% happens on the job. Like you can do all the lab work you want until you're actually in an environment doing that work, you're not setting those patterns in stone. Um, so when you have these excessively long apprenticeships of sorts where, you sweep the cafe for 6 hours a day and then I'll let you make your own drink at night kind of thing. Um, you're not developing people in a reasonable method. And I think as specialty coffee shifts and you start seeing it more and more places, having realistic approaches that can meet a whole range of people where they're at is essential for us as an industry if we want to grow in a positive and effective way that doesn't shut out folks that um, are maybe not as resilient under what can often feel like abuse.
Yeah, I love it. And 10, 20, 70 is something I'm gonna look up. It kind of reminds me of a quote that I read, that I heard somewhere. There's so much reading that you can do about push-ups. Like
Yeah,
until you start doing them, then you can feel. Also, I think it's fair towards the actual person because you know unless you try it, you don't know the pain of it. You don't know if you like it because, again, you didn't enjoy, the film game. So, but you had to be on it in order to rule out whether you liked it or not. So I think it's
yeah,
also that element as well. And then obviously I think ultimately said in order to get to 20 push-ups, you got to start from one or two or three and make your way all the way to 20. Same with, hours under your belt on the coffee shop. And yeah, I think it's interesting because I get where you were coming from, especially when it comes to, well, you need the structure because it's 80 plus stores. At the same time, you're really, you're still enhancing the concept of the fact that, the biggest investment for many companies are the people working within that.
yeah,
So, your role is actually super important because that get the people through, the food through the door, and the people make the the experience as well as the design, as well as the brand, as well as the coffee. But the first point of contact will be the people, and even social media. There's people behind replying to your comments or replying to your stories. So yeah, people is super. Oh yeah, I could. Yeah, like I said, I'm more passionate about people than coffee. So, and when it comes to training, so what's your sort of thinking when it comes to home brewing? What have you seen in the past few months and the past few years, how it has been evolving? Because I believe in the past 6 months, home brewing has just been
oh
skyrocketing.
yeah. I mean, it's it's funny because I felt like when I was getting into coffee back in early 2000s, I was like, oh man, this is a golden era of coffee. Like all these options are available now that weren't available 5 years ago, even in terms of espresso machines and blogs you could read and things like that. And it was an amazing era of coffee, but like it's even better now. The access to online content, like the fact that you can watch how-to videos from world champions, you can go on to any of like your training websites like Masterclass or whatever, and there's even coffee colleges. UC Davis has a curriculum for coffee professionals. There's organized competitions. There's like different nonprofits. There's so many amazing outlets, and you can access all of them from your phone. So as a home brewer, I think it's a pretty magical moment. The thing that I look forward to is cafes embracing it more. You know, and there are some, and some do it in like one-off fashions, or they have some level of classes, but seeing that opportunity approached more aggressively by coffee roasters in terms of having in cafe opportunities to learn and grow, to kind of break down that barrier. And there's so much research around the idea that once people are taught how to do something like a semi-complex task, their estimation of the value of it increases 2 to 3 times, right? So if you have a brew class, say you're a cafe that brews by the cup, and some of your guests come in there, once they realize how hard it is to do it accurately, all of a sudden you're seeing more money in that tip jar. You're not hearing any complaints when you raise your prices to a fair market level, because people realize that attachment once they've had an opportunity. But if it all remains behind a curtain and they just see you back there like playing with kettles and moving stuff around, they don't truly understand what the effort is, and therefore can't associate the same level of value that we associate putting the effort in ourselves. So I think training homebrewers in cafes, it's a new frontier that needs even more investment than you see right now.
And I really appreciate you mentioning that, because I think I'm hoping that with the lockdown we are we are quite in a situation down here in Melbourne, because anyway, we leave the politics out of it, but we are currently in the stage 4 lockdown, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
There's a curfew, and I think it's just really, my hope is exactly what you were saying, where it's like what people now decided, like brewing their AeroPresses, their V60s, their espresso at home. And I'm hoping that they will start appreciating more what's behind their daily morning or afternoon of cups. And hopefully once things go to a semi-normal, they will start seeing more. Maybe they're not going to complain if they're waiting 9.5 minutes instead of 6, or 12 instead of 10. And I'm hoping that will maybe also have a reflection on pricing. I hope that they might go to those shops where they're not serving necessarily, fair price market coffee, and it's quite, not quite there in terms of taste. And they might be like, well, actually, I've been drinking all these amazing coffees because I've been educating myself. I don't like this anymore. I'm going to look for another, which will force eventually other businesses looking at increasing their quality. That's sort of my hope.
Yeah. I mean, the market for single origin coffees in the higher end of the price scale has never been better. And all that comes from just that continual investment from companies around the world investing in educating the consumer as to what high quality can look like. I mean, I still think one of the challenges is that all of these coffees on the menu are still so, excuse me, they're still so like abstract. People walk in and they see these farm names and producer names, and they're like, oh, that one's expensive, that one's less expensive, this is the least expensive, I'll go for the middle one. Like, they have so little reference to figure out where to fall in there, and building a knowledge of coffee it's so difficult because we don't have the consistency that the wine world or the beer world or the spirits world has. So one roaster will roast it different from another roaster, and one season will be different from another season. So it's hard to have like those foundational pillars of like, oh, this is what a red wine from this region in Spain is like, or so I think that is a bit of a challenge, but hopefully as we get technology a little bit better, and all this work around freezing coffee that you're seeing, so that people can start to do vintages where it's like, oh yeah, no, I had that 2017 Panama Geisha from Proud Mary. Yeah, it was wonderful. And people can start cross-referencing that, and extraction techniques get to be more consistent, and we find ways to reel these variables in so that there is a common language. I think all of that will go a long way to pushing those coffees more mainstream as well.
Yeah, and well, my following question was going to be in terms of how important is innovation and branding, and because obviously something that I've always loved about Blue Bottle is also the strong presence and that particular look when it comes to social media, which is sort of my field at the moment with coffee. But saying what you were, in answer to what you were saying, it's like maybe it's also the language. I always refer to the craft beer in Australia because it's like tasting notes. They're quite, what you were saying is like, oh, what do I pick, so that people start looking at price. But also they look at the tasting notes, and it can quite be a little bit overwhelming because what does it mean? It's going to taste like cola and pina colada and, you know, with a dust of cinnamon. I think, you know, something that people understand is also aesthetics, or they have a, you know, their own subjective way. So what beers have done down here is like they went back a little bit to cans. Cans are really popular at the moment, and it's just,
Yeah.
man, the design on them. I don't drink much, but when I walk into a shop, I waste so much time looking at all the amazing art on it. And yeah, sure, somewhere this might be written, you know, very fruity, hoppy, tropical kind of flavors, but I think that I don't know. There must be a way to sort of translate better what coffee tastes like, and make it more, I suppose, approachable. Which it kind of connects to what we were going towards, which is how important is this day and age to be like, well, we've been doing coffee for so long in a cafe scenario for 10, 12 years. I think I know what I'm doing. And all of a sudden the pandemic hits you. How important for a company to always be up to pace with innovation and technology and other avenues, because right now there's a lot of people going, well, I would love to sell lots of stuff online, but they might not have built that following audience.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a pretty brutal lesson for smaller companies around the world. You know, I predict a 30% loss in like coffee companies that are under 20 employees. Just because if they don't have that ability to pull that revenue being shut down for this amount of time, or to the restricted income of whatever sort of operating options are available to them, it's going to be near impossible. I think that's the biggest, not the biggest shame about COVID. You know, 1 million dead people is a pretty big shame. But one of the really hurtful actions is going to be, it's going to really increase that divide between the larger companies that could survive and the smaller ones that could not. I mean, the good news is I feel like smaller coffee companies have actually been more resilient than I was afraid of at first, just because people need coffee, you know, and unlike restaurants, it's a very portable object. So like once they were able to get something in place, a lot of companies have been able to get to a scrape by point of like handoff windows and things like that. So I feel like it hasn't been as bad as I was afraid it would be, but innovation on that side in terms of technology and access to be able to sell things to guests is a hugely important component for a business model. And I think anything that you see starting from here on out, you know, that's the ticket to entry. Like making sure that you have that as an option, I think is going to be most people's first part of their business plan.
Yeah, it's just been interesting for me to see different operations and different, because obviously my job is to keep an eye on everything that happens around, especially the Melbourne market, global and Australia. But it's like, you know, I've seen amazing people doing, you know, even chefs doing, you know, master classes online, or, you know, boxes, subscriptions, or, you know, like his ingredients for your favorite meals at this fancy restaurant. Now you can cook it yourself, and for an extra couple of dollars or more, you can actually get a Zoom call and cook with me. And then you have the ones who are a little bit more like, no, stuff the delivery services that take too much percentage. But the conversation around that for me, it's like, yeah, they do, but they also got the power to put you on the map as a one plus. The second plus is you're reaching new people. The third plus is you can get out of the limited zone, because people can't walk to you if they're, you know, in this case, further than 5 kilometers. And it's interesting because I've seen a lot of things, and I think people still trying to find what's the right fit, but there isn't really a right or wrong way to go about it. But I think that for many years, coffee professionals, like you were talking about, big egos, we could have been a little bit stubborn and be like, no, that's how it's done. This is it. I, you know, learned everything I had to learn. But I think we could keep a more of an open-minded set when it comes to, especially business operations. And, you know, Okay, sure. The puck press and milk dispensers and whatnot might not have, some people say, well, I'm no longer a barista, but now you got an extra 23 seconds to talk to your customer and connect. So I think there's a demonization of technology, but really, would we all go back to handwritten letters and with a pigeon? Or we sticking with emails with the cons that come with it?
Yeah. No, I mean the future of coffee is it's scary, honestly, for me. Um, just because it's so unpredictable. I mean, any day we could wake up and find out that, you know, you can make an amazing single origin, you can have a perfect shot of espresso and perfect steamed milk without any of the skills that I've spent the last 20 years of my life developing. Like, and our industry is not alone. It's happening everywhere as the world figures it out. But the question becomes, is it a bad thing that people can get great coffee easier? And you know, it's to me, it's an easy answer in that it's no. But the question is, how do we still have it be a sustainable economy for people that are in that industry, and what does that look like? Um, Innovations happened throughout every stage of human existence. Um, we have machines to make tires now instead of chiseling them out of stone like the Flintstones did. Um, so it's things shift and things change, but it is scary. Change is scary. It's hard to deal with for a lot of people, myself included. But you can't be afraid of it. If you sit there and you dig your heels in and say, I'm not going to change, then fine, don't change, but the world will, and you'll be left behind.
Yeah. Word. Change is scary, and at so many levels, and I think that you hit the nail right there. It's just change is scary. I think my hope is, coffee is all about connecting people and humans. Not all about, but a grand part of it. And I'm hoping that no matter how many robots are pulling shots, that we will still need a point of contact, and hopefully we can make it, like you said, in a sustainable way. I just lifted my eyes to look at the time, and I can't believe that's, we got like 6 minutes to go. I could go probably for a good solid hour, but good mate. D-Train is saying baristas need to understand with the shift towards more automation, their customer service skills will become even more important. Less time on the machine, more time to talk with and understand your consumer, which is, super on point.
When's the last time you saw a sommelier pull a glass of wine? They don't do anything. They pour a glass of wine, and it works out great. Their skills are highly in demand. There's thousands of them, hundreds of thousands of them around the world. Things shift.
Yeah, I 100%. Look, I just want to sort of leave you with a last question, because I usually ask this. Hopefully we got enough time. Thank you, firstly. It's been super interesting, and I have a zillion more questions, but I'm very grateful for your time here today, and I really hope that we get to reopen the borders and meet for a coffee or something, or a whiskey. Or you love whiskey sometimes. But when it comes to you, what's your mission and what's next on your planet?
I mean, I'm actually at an interesting point. One of the great things that Blue Bottle has done is they've let me grow, and they've always pushed me towards the edge of my competence, right? So when I first started, it was helping Handsome integrate inside of Blue Bottle, and then it became building the training program, and then it became scaling the training program, then it became opening new cafes, and at this point, I'm focusing on culture events, like how to connect people. And I'm sort of at an inflection point where I'm going to reimagine what my role looks like in the future a little bit. And it will, at least currently, it looks like it's going to be focused on how do we connect with baristas or home consumers and making coffee in that environment. So that's exciting. That's a shift hopefully coming up here. Um, but I'm like, as with everybody, I'm sure right now in COVID, like going crazy and I need to do stuff. And funny enough, I'm reaching back to my film career. And I just yesterday got a brand new camera, a couple of prime lenses, and I'm going to start hopefully shooting some content. So what it looks like, I have no idea, but I wanna start having fun with cameras again and pull coffee into that mix, and we'll see what comes out of it, and hopefully it'll be something entertaining enough to share with the world.
I'm sure it will be, and it's super nice to hear. I think that just ties up how you started. And I think the key word is have fun. Like you say, I'm just going to have fun with it. And whether 1, 10, 100, or 1,000 people view it or say it doesn't matter as long as you enjoy the process of it and what you're shooting. I'm super excited. I'm assuming by my assumptions maybe that there'll be some maybe coffee content,
Most
or
likely, yeah.
possibly, but I'm very, very keen to see, and please do share with the world, because I think there's never enough good content, and I love to see you getting back into the original game. It's yeah, that's such a nice way to finish this. And I'm actually on a project of getting my hair long, and gone through some pictures to find yours. I was like, damn, this guy, I know he's
Oh,
here.
yeah.
So anyway, I'm getting there.
I got short just a month ago. It was down to here. I want to say early January, and then I always float. It used to be down to my belly button when I was in college. Yeah, and
Well,
sometimes it's shaved. It's have fun with it. Don't take yourself too seriously. It's
oh no, I'm at that stage where the sides, and have a bit of a mullet, so I'm like the cap just works in my favor. But yeah, well, hair aside, Michael, from film to coffee, back to film, from world barista champion to an amazing and inspiring person who just helps people to get better at the coffee and the job, and creating culture for such an amazing company as Blue Bottle. I just, yeah, I want to say again thank you, and I hope that people who just tune in now, or people who are really listening to this, are just gonna pay attention to what you had said, and perhaps we could do a 2.0 version of this, maybe at Blue Bottle. Maybe we could do a little share some education, or do something maybe fun, or we could shoot or whatever. I'll leave that with you. But yeah, thank you again so much for popping by, man.
Oh, thanks for having me on. It was great to get a chance to reach over an ocean and talk to somebody out there. It's been blessed.
Thank you. I will love and leave you, and I'll shoot you a DM at the end of it. Thank you again.
Excellent. Thank you, Mirko. See ya.
Hey, there you have it, guys. Sometimes I want to pinch myself and just realize how super lucky I am to meet and talk with these amazing people. Everybody's amazing, but it's just super incredible. I had so much stimulation in my brain, but it's like a massage. It's like I wanted to ask Michael so much more, but what I've asked was relevant and interest of mine, and I just, yeah, I just love doing this, and I'm gonna do more. This was episode 86, and I'm not stopping. But yeah, if you just tuned in, or if you're new, feel free to take a screenshot, share this on your Instagram stories. We got a podcast as well with all the previous episodes. It's on YouTube, it's on IGTV. I'm not promoting myself for the sake of clout. I don't care, really. It's more because the more I get feedback I get, the more I can improve, and the more guests like we can bring on, and the more episodes we can do, and keep this a growing community-based podcast, which was always at the basis and foundation of why I started. Again, big thank you to all of you tuning in. It's a different time because Michael is in the USA, a big thanks to Michael. Yeah, incredible story, incredible human. And again, thank you all. Stay well, drink good coffee, and I will see you real soon. Bye.